Welcome to the Hearing Horizons podcast from the Hearing Review. I'm the chief editor of the Hearing Review, Melanie Hamilton-Basich. I'm joined today by Michael Andreozzi of Beltone to talk about his experience and his perspective on the hearing industry, which he's been involved in for about 4 decades. More recently, he was named the next president of the International Hearing Society and was chosen as the recipient of the Hearing Review Professional Leadership Award, presented at the 2023 International Hearing Society Convention. Congratulations, Michael.
Thank you, Melanie. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for the opportunity to talk with you today.
Absolutely. Now, you've been extremely involved in the hearing industry for over the past 40 years or so through your retail business and as a member of both the Rhode Island Licensing Board and the International Hearing Society Board. Can you share what you feel are some of the biggest changes you've seen in hearing healthcare in recent years?
Sure. The industry's changed and the profession's changed immensely over the last 4 decades, at least I've been in it. And I think there's a lot of big things that a lot of people are in people's minds more than ever. I think one of the things that we've seen more recently is just insurance becoming a bigger part of the hearing profession, and that being in the managed care side of the business, the hearing benefit managers, the HBMs as we call them. Those types of things were never as present over the last couple decades as they are in the last 4 or 5 years at a large scale. So it's having insurance a part of the business and having a way to manage the insurance aspect in a private practice or audiology practice or whatever kind of practice you're in has been the biggest challenge. So I hear about it every single day for folks that I speak with. The common question is, how much insurance should I take? How much should I not take? How do I integrate it into my practice properly? How do I bill for it? Should I not take it? Should I be more of a boutique type of hearing aid practice and not take insurance at all? And we're seeing those things happen every single day in the marketplace. I would say the other piece of it is just that coincides with it is the fact that Medicare Advantage is such a big part of the world we live in today in the United States. So anyone who's over 65 years old is obviously eligible for Medicare Advantage plans. And about 50 to 60% of the population who's 65 plus has opted into some kind of Medicare Advantage plan that has a hearing aid benefit attached to it. If you go back 5, 6 years, that was not in the play. And today, more and more people have the hearing aid benefit. They're wondering what that benefit is and how they take advantage of that benefit in their insurance play. So as someone who owns a hearing aid retail business or an audiology practice, you're now up against working with a third-party administrator to help execute on those benefits. And that patient's technically not yours. It's the hearing benefit manager. And that's been a big challenge for people who run practices. So that's a big one as well. Obviously, the most obvious one the last year, as it relates to conversations over the counter hearing aids. That's been something that obviously has been talked about for years. We're just going on a year now that it's actually been put into legislation through the government. And, that came with so much concern and so much conversation. And here we are a year later, and we look in the mirror now and you say, what did it do to the business? Well, for the most people who in audiology or private practice, it really didn't change their practice much. And I would say most of the people I speak with would say that in some instances it has enhanced their business because there's been a much bigger presence of advertising, marketing, awareness of hearing loss in a lot of ways in different advertising forms that has enhanced more people to look at hearing instruments as a mainstream device, which is good. I think it's taught us that the one thing I've seen for sure is that people still don't buy over-the-counter hearing aids versus prescription hearing aids in abundance. It's still something that they put off buying for many years. So it involves some kind of shepherding process, as I like to call it, to get people to get to that point to buy hearing aids. So OTC has been a big thing. Digital marketing continues to be, I say, on the forefront of everyone's mind of how we use digital marketing to advertise and promote your hearing aid practice, your audiology practice on a large scale, and drive people into your clinics. Direct mail, newspaper, things of those lines. They're still going on today, but really with the advent of digital marketing to the highest scales now, I love seeing some of the great minds in our profession that have come up with best ways to kind of segment it and target those individuals with hearing loss to get them to come into a hearing clinic to find more about what a hearing aid and hearing clinics can do for them. A couple other things that come to mind, Mel, is I would say that the actual patient experience that is, in essence, in a hearing instrument practice or audiology practice, the bar has been raised. In my mind. So in order to be really great at a profession, because now we have big box retail in the business, and we have boutique audiology and hearing aid practices, and you have your typical mom and pop practices out there, is finding ways to make your business different. And I think that's come of age in a large scale. So I'm seeing practices kind of put themselves at a different level, customizing their practice in a special way that makes them unique and different. And that's something that's really neat about it.
Are there any examples that you could provide of some ways that different clinics or businesses have set themselves apart that you've seen?
Yes, I would say that, from a private practice standpoint, an audiology practice, I've seen people who have expanded their footprint of number of stores they have, and developed kind of a more of a cookie cutter approach to what their clinics should look like and offices should look like on a professional scale, with the proper waiting rooms and the proper signage and digital media in the waiting room while people waiting to see a practitioner. I've seen that their exam room where they see a patient, is set up in a different way, so it's more interactive with the patient. So they're not always sitting across a desk; they're sitting next to that patient, and they're interacting with them a different way. So it's a different type of feel, a transaction that goes along. I've seen the offices using layouts of displays differently that are enhanced on a large scale. A lot of the big five manufacturers, who are obviously the people who build our products for the industry, have stepped into the retail arena in the last couple of years. They're looking at building these kind of very unique hearing instrument retail audiology stores that have a cross of over-the-counter hearing aids, retail hearing aids, and maybe some of the personal sound devices for regular ear pods and stuff like that, making it more of an ear store. I've seen some flavors of that are coming down. Sonova, for example, is doing the World of Hearing, which is one of the projects they have going on. And I've seen Hearex um, revamping their stores with a new look and a different feel and a different flow, and how patients are greeted when they come in. So those are just a couple examples, but raising the bar of how your furniture and fixtures and your layout and how your office looks, modernizing it. I think that we're medical retail. So we have to, in my mind, making your office look more spa-like in some sense, to raise the bar so people come in and have a better feeling about it. That's what we need to do, and that's what I'm seeing in some instances as well. I hope that answers your question. Um, the other aspect is just the patient management of it. When people are coming in your offices today, time is valuable, and if you're taking managed care as a part of your business, making sure your schedule is set up so that you're allocating proper time schedule for people who are insurance reimbursement versus private pay, who deserve more time, because there's more. That's your patient. You own that patient. He or she is devoted to your practice. It's not getting paid from a benefit from a third party company. Having to manage that seems to be one of the biggest challenges that I see with a lot of practices today. We're seeing a lot younger patients come through the doors now, and that's thanks to some of the OTC stuff, and also just the fact that the population itself is becoming more mainstream to adapt themselves to hearing aids, where it's, even though it's still looked at as a handicapped item, if you will, or something that helps people, but we see people constantly with things in their ears today, which makes it more mainstream in some respects. So having to market and advertise and deal with a younger patient base versus your typical 75 or 80-year-old patient or 85-year-old patient that we've dealt with for years, that's making people look at things in a different way. That's been a significant change. Um, the other, I would say, two other aspects of things that I've really paid attention to that have been very present is the direct-to-consumer (DTC) space. Practices or businesses being set up that directly go right to the consumer digitally through the web, and do um, advertising, marketing, hearing testing, fitting, delivery, aftercare, all digitally, through this process. That's something that we've seen grow, but it's also been something that we've seen grow and not being a profitable margin for a lot of the companies that have entered into that space. So as much as people are trying to invest money into the direct to consumer marketplace, no one's really been able to do it in a profitable way. So that tells me that something has to be done in order to kind of change that model in a certain way. Lastly, I would say that, big box retail in the last 10 or 15 years has obviously come of age, whether it's Costco or Sam's Club and some of the other companies that have entered that space. And they have a big market share within our profession. So keeping a close eye on how they do business versus how you do business in a private practice is something that is going to be differentiated over the years, how you set up your practice. But keeping a close eye on big box, because that continues to grow and consolidation continues to happen within that space. Um, I thought of one last one too, Mela. I would say looking at other outside companies that are entering the space who are typically not in the hearing aid space. Perfect example, more recently, like Hearing Review reported recently, was Luxottica looking at entering into the hearing aid space. Here's an eyeglass retailer who has a very large presence in that field and stepping their toe, not just their toe, they're putting their whole foot in the space very soon with some new technology that incorporates into eyeglasses to make them more mainstream. And there's no stigma attached to wearing a hearing aid through an eyeglass. It hasn't really been clearly defined what that represents, but no question, a company like Luxottica, with the resources they have to enter space and the number of stores and the presence they have, that's something to keep a close eye on. It's always interesting to see what an outside perspective leads to our space. So we'll be looking closely at that. So those are some of the ones. I know that's a lot of them, but those are the ones that to me come to mind that are the most present in the space today.
Yeah, I think those are some great reminders of how things are changing and what we can look forward to as perspectives change as well.
Correct, 100%.
So you recently sold your retail business and began a new role at Beltone as brand ambassador. What do you miss about owning and running your own business, and what tips or advice might you have for current business owners based on your experience?
It's funny. I seem to be busier today than, than I was when I owned my own business, and I've heard that from other people. But after 40 years of running hearing aid retail and growing it to larger scales, there's just certain aspects I truly definitely miss. I can tell you that I miss being involved in the day-to-day activities with the manpower teams that we had in place, and also seeing the mentoring that myself and my team did of people that are entering the hearing industry profession. I really loved, mentoring folks to get better in our profession. And that was one thing I really enjoyed. I loved the team approach that we had in growing our business and finding retail locations and finding practices to purchase and stuff like that, and controlling that. That was something I really, I miss. Probably the number one thing is just motivating people in the profession. That's one thing I guess I've been gifted in doing over the years, and motivating people, getting them excited about the profession, showing them some of the things that the profession does for other people, and doing that on I would say at a local level. That was something that I really enjoyed. I really always saw the business through other people's eyes as I got older. And when I brought someone into the business and they were interested in the profession, treating seeing those eyes, the way they saw patients and how they interacted with patients and how they were motivated to see how patients reacted with new amplification and hearing instruments. It reminds me when I was younger in the business, and I really enjoyed that. I would say that the profession itself is going to grow really significantly, especially on the hearing instrument dispenser side of things, because I see the industry continue to grow at larger scales. And I also see that the audiology side of the business not growing at the same pace. There's still audiologists that are coming out of school each year and through the AUD programs. But at the same token, we see a lot of audiologists retiring as they hit certain age brackets and stuff like that. And it's not happening at the same scale of a number of audiologists coming to field. With that being said, there's no question that hearing instrument specialists who can get licensed in the state they work in is going to be a very important role, and is something that needs to be enhanced at a large scale. So I'm kind of excited to see how that goes for years on and on with how we do that. Training those people, getting them to the marketplace. That was something that, owning a private practice, my company that I sold was extremely great at. We were really good at bringing someone who was from outside the space or new to the industry or had a big interest in becoming in this business, spending a lot of time training them, mentoring them, getting them ready via book, online classes, preparation, shadowing, and getting them prep for license. We were very good at that, and we had a lot of great success stories in that. So that's going to be something that the industry needs, and that's something that I kind of missed in a lot of ways these days. But a lot of hard work involved in that side of things. Um, but I'm excited about some of the things I'm doing at Beltone as the brand ambassador as well, which is exciting because I'm still working with Beltone owners across the country. I still talk to them on a regular basis. My perspective of owning I was a Miracle Air franchise for many years. I was a Beltone dispenser owner for many years. I was an independent multi-line practice owner for many years. So having all those hats that I worn over the years in the practice, anyone who's coming into the space, I feel like I can give good advice along those lines because I've kind of been in all the different spaces within the retail side of it. And also when you're a private business owner, you need to know the accounting and the finance and the business and the marketing and the HR and all the important things that go along with running a practice these days. And someone coming into the practice who's fresh out of school, if you will, who wants to run a practice, there's a lot to be had in this. And that's why you're seeing networks like ours embrace some of those people, because we can really supply all the tools necessary to make that person successful and give them the ability to do that very well. So it's fun with what I'm doing right now, and I'm really enjoying it quite a bit, actually.
I know that in the past you've also been very involved in advocating for hearing care legislation and have lobbied in Washington, D.C. on key issues. Can you share your perspective on some of the current and upcoming legislation that you think hearing care professionals should be aware of right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's one that's probably been on the biggest headline was just along the lines of the Medicare bill. The Medicare bill that's in Washington today is something that's been getting a little bit more traction than it has in the past. It's something to pay close attention to. It's initially was set up that would be the ability for anyone who's on Medicare to get hearing aid reimbursement. The government and a group of reps and senators were trying to bring it to fruition. When the government did the analysis on what it was going to cost, it was going to be just an astronomical number to pay for those kind of hearing aids, and they were trying to group it with dental and eyeglasses as well, which made it even more gigantic as far as the trillions of dollars it was going to cost over a period of time. Then they kind of figured out maybe we can just separate the hearing aid from it. And then they went in and said, how about if we just do it for severe or profound hearing losses? So there's been a lot of different, variations of this bill. So it's one that we need to keep a close eye on all sides, because really on the audiology side, they're trying to allow for Medicare to pay for insurance reimbursements for some of the testing services that an audiologist does. And they're also trying to get the hearing aids covered for certain losses, as I said before, severe to profound, but they're trying to broaden that to a larger scale. These days in Washington, everything comes with a cost, as it always has, and it gets measured. So there's so much going on along that. For that kind of bill at that kind of scale to get across the finish line would be challenging these days. So that's something we have to keep an eye on. I would say cost has always been the biggest obstacle whenever someone brings up the term of hearing aids and Medicare or some kind of reimbursement. The OTC legislation was really brought up to drive down the cost of hearing aids, because they felt like hearing aids were too expensive for the normal person to purchase. They felt like over-the-counter hearing aids was going to open up the access and drive the cost down, and people would flood in to buy them because now all of a sudden the price barrier was removed. And I can tell you a year later that has not happened. It hasn't happened at a large scale. I don't even think it's happened at a small scale. The over-the-counter hearing aids are being sold, but not to the degree that I think that the government felt that was going to happen to kind of satisfy the reason why they did it. So you got the prescription category, you got the over-the-counter category. People are still confused what to do with it, which is kind of interesting. It's still something that makes it challenging for us. So I think the other thing that the legislation has been very active on is just the fact that when over-the-counter hearing aids did get approved, there was a lot of states, as many as 20 states, that had to go back to their state laws and change their wording in their state laws, because the word prescription being included in the actual legislation for over-the-counter hearing aids, to say that there was an over-the-counter category and there was a prescription category. That word prescription, even though the FDA thought that they were helping things, caused a lot of confusion on a state-by-state basis. So, for example, in the state of Rhode Island, where I'm in, we had to go back and change our writing of our legislation to make sure that it coincide properly. And other states have been through the same thing, and that's not an easy process. And there's also the risk when you open up your laws in your states. It comes with a price sometimes, because when you open it up, there's people who want to change the law, and that's scary to a lot of people on both sides of this, on all sides of it, I should say. So that's been very, very keeping us very busy in Washington in a lobbying way. And IHS, for example, is really tremendous. They're the group that really oversees all the hearing aid dispensers lobbying efforts on a nationwide scale, state by state, and we do a tremendous job at doing that. It's one of the big things that we do at IHS to represent all the hearing instruments dispensers and specialists in the country, and that's why it's so important that those specialists are part of IHS, so that we have a voice for them on a large scale. So that's really a big piece of it.
That's great. And along those same lines, can you share some of your goals for your tenure as president of the International Hearing Society, and also what you'd like to see happening in the industry as a whole?
Yeah, first of all, when I take over as president, and it's and the way that works is you got a 2-year president-elect, 2 years president, and 2 years past president. It's a 6-year commitment. It's a long time, but it shows that everybody who gets in this position is very dedicated to making sure that things work really well, and that we're all involved in trying to do the right thing for the hearing instruments specialists out there. The one thing I would say that we want to really try to do is to bring more hearing instrument specialists into the field, because I mentioned earlier, there's going to be more and more a necessity for more people licensed in this business. So having the ability to bring more people in and get them licensed is a very important part. So that's something that I'm really passionate about. And also having more members who are actually part of the International Hearing Aid Society, so that we have a larger voice in Washington and in the profession. That's something that's really important. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people who enter the field are not really presented with the fact of what the International Hearing Aid Society does for the hearing instrument specialists, and some of them don't know enough about it. It's something that has to really happen. If you're an audiologist in the field, you have to join one of the associations in order to get licensed and get an affiliation. If you're a hearing instrument specialist, that's really not the case, except at your state level. We're the only representation that represents you across the country and in Washington. So it's critically important that more people understand what the benefits are of becoming a hearing instrument specialist and becoming part of the International Hearing Society. So that's really big. The other thing that I would love to be able to see done on a large scale is for hearing aids to become what I consider to be more mainstream in society, so that, no different than the eyeglasses that I have on my head right now that are a normal part of the way the world works today. I really love for hearing aids to fall in that category over a period of time. I've talked about over and over for years saying, oh, we need to make hearing aids sexy. We need to make hearing aids this, we need to make hearing aids that. I don't even know if that's the right terminology to describe it, but we need to make them more mainstream so that hearing aids are a part of life for anybody, whether you're young or old. And I think that we're at a great position today to be able to do that, because so many people walk around with something in the ear now. You don't know if it's a earbud, you don't know if it's a hearing aid, you don't know if it's a crossover unit. You have no idea. So when I look around all the time when I'm in different restaurants and stuff, and if somebody has earbuds in and they're white or black colored, and a waitress or waiter is talking to those people, they think they're listening to music. They don't really think they're utilizing them to hear and enhance a conversation, whereas a hearing aid is designed for that. So how do you kind of, find a crossover to link those two things together so that people understand that, it's being used for a certain purpose? So that's something I'm really kind of passionate about, of trying to, educate the consumers and educate professionals so that we have a crossover. The other thing I think is most important to me is that one thing we've learned so much in my 40 years, obviously, in the hearing aid business, is that when I first started 40 years ago, my dad, when he first started training me in the hearing aid business, Michael Andreozzi, he taught me that, I said, Michael, day one, he said, people don't buy hearing aids, they're sold. And I said, Dad, what do you mean by that? He says, people never come in to buy a hearing aid, they're always sold. And I fast forward 40 years later to today, and I think about all my 40 years in the business, I never had one patient walk in the office to say, hey, I'm here to buy my hearing aid today. It just never happened. So here we are in a very modern era of hearing and technology and advertising and marketing and digital media and over-the-counter hearing aids. Very few people obviously come in to buy over-the-counter hearing aids, but not in abundance. So we're still at this dilemma of a kind of uncertainty of why people don't act towards buying hearing devices. So I want to be able to find a way to kind of bridge that gap. And I think it's something that great minds out there will kind of bridge that gap, and we'll find something in a marketing advertising campaign that will make people more aware that hearing aids are something that are very helpful. It's not something that should be a stigma. It should be something a part of life to make your life more enjoyable and put you in the conversations better. So those are the things I'm really focused on as I move forward.
Thank you, Mike, for your contributions to the hearing care industry so far, as well as your insights today. And I know there's more to come. And thank you to our listeners. For more podcasts, as well as news and articles, and to subscribe to the Hearing Review and our newsletters, go to hearingreview.com.